When it comes down to it, AI is being used really in almost all video production these days.
What AI helps us do at scale is start to organize and extract structured data from this unstructured medium of video.
It just, opens up so many new possibilities in terms of review, in terms of remix, in terms of getting people to the content that they need.
It's just getting better and better and harder to tell what's real and what was AI generated.
Video needs to be where the work is done.
The Video at Work podcast.
Everything we do as consumer for the last decade, we do it with video. Why don't we do it at work?
Hi everybody, this is Dave Jeyes, Senior Vice President of Product for Vbrick, and this is another episode of Video at Work by Vbrick. I'm joined today and really excited to welcome Amanda Foskett, Senior Product Manager of AI for Vbrick. Amanda, welcome to the show.
Thanks, excited to chat all things AI.
Right. Well, and it's exciting because, obviously you and I talk about AI pretty much every day and where video AI is going and how companies can take more advantage of their video. So I'm really excited to kind of riff on topics about the industry at large and what we can kind of foresee on the horizon there. So I think three interesting topics about video AI that we can talk about. One being generative video, right? Creating video or using avatars. The second one being AI-enabled workflows. This is things like AI editing or enhancements. And then the third one really, which is where you have the most expertise and depth there is really about video understanding, right? And understanding the video and then applying that back to workflows. And so maybe we start with generative video and what your take is on the quality, the trajectory, and the direction of video generation, especially, when it comes to work.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting right now is how many players we see getting into the game of AI-generated video. Not too long ago, it was a really niche kind of an area where we saw very few folks doing it, very few folks doing it well. And in the last couple of years, there's been quite an explosion of people in the market producing AI-generated video. And it's just getting better and better and harder to tell what's real and what was AI-generated.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Although I do think there's a huge difference between what's going on in terms of avatars versus what's going on in terms of, true generating video from scratch, right? And it seems like avatar creation or avatar usage is really picking up. I think we're seeing that a lot in terms of marketing videos. We're seeing it in terms of learning videos, right? And, in some ways in terms of communications or announcements. I think that's really kind of an interesting world in terms of avatars, right? But I do wonder, much like everything else generative, right? How do you know whether that's really the person's sentiment? How do you know, if that's really somebody speaking to you versus, mass personalization? And I'd love to get your thoughts there.
We see user adoption or acceptance of these certain things on a real use case by use case basis. So we see levels of acceptance higher when it's kind of a less high stakes type of communication. So potentially with ads or general announcements, folks might be more accepting of avatars or low quality or things like that. Things that are potentially more kind of emotionally triggering might be CEO announcements, or when we see faces we might recognize other ways in or other places like celebrities. Those things start to trigger us, I think, emotionally in a way that generic communications don't. And so it's interesting to see, folks who are accepting of one kind of use case for this video AI and not particularly accepting or willing to engage with other types.
Yeah, well, and you bring up a good point about celebrities, right? There's a fine line between an avatar announcing something on a company's behalf or announcing a change inside a company in terms of process and a deep fake of a celebrity, right? And it gets especially poignant when you start talking about a CEO and a deep fake and potentially announcing something that changes stock prices or causes employees, concern or things like that. And so, it is important to understand where the message is coming from, right? I think the other thing I think in terms of use cases is we talked a little about communications and then learning and training. But it's important to realize that with an avatar, you can't show somebody how to do something with an avatar, right? If you're looking to help somebody, solve a problem, even a computer problem, you can't show them with an avatar. It just doesn't work that way. And so I do think there can be some value in terms of avatars with communicating in a richer medium, or, scaling up content production. I think, a lot of companies are realizing how powerful video is as a medium. But then you get into the opposing question of, is it as powerful of a medium if it's, not the authentic person taking the time to sit down and have a conversation, right?
Yeah. And I think that's potentially an interesting transition to our next topic about where we see AI in workflows. Because at the end of the day, you are still going to have human-generated video content for things like trainings, things that you just can't get avatars to do if you need to show someone doing something. So the question then becomes, if AI is not creating the video for us, where can AI help optimize certain production components, either in pre-production, production, post-production? There are lots of opportunities where AI can be utilized to expedite, optimize all of those pieces of the production pipeline.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and we talk about this a lot in terms of what's synthetic versus authentic, and can it be both, right? But when it comes down to it, AI is being used really in almost all video production these days, right? So, I mean, who even on a video conference doesn't use a little bit of filter, right? It's on by default these days, or a little bit of blur, right, to maintain privacy and professionalism. And I don't think people have really a strong reaction to that. It's just kind of considered normal these days. But a stronger reaction to something that's completely synthetic, right? And doesn't have the human touch on it. And I do think that the quality of the video is so much different if you're using, video editing tools or filters or maybe a little bit of generative fill, things like that. You can still maintain high levels of quality and authenticity and make the video workflow faster.
Yeah. Right.
Now, one thing I do want to jump back to, I think it's, another interesting place in the video generation world is tools that do pure play video generation, right? When you are just using a prompt to create a video and maybe trying to string that together with some storyboards or images to kind of tie things together. This is an area where, I'm not sure what you've been hearing or seeing in the market, but I haven't seen as much adoption of pure play generative video in my travels. So I'd be curious to get your take there.
It's an interesting trajectory, I think, as we see the clips get longer and longer, right? And so we saw a lot of these generative platforms bring themselves to the market with really short clips, right? 3 to 5 seconds or 5 to 10 seconds. And it almost seemed more, because it was so short, it made it easier to flag as AI generated, right? That you've got these really short clips. And now as they become longer and longer, they become more harder to tell what's real and what's not. And so, as they get longer, as they get better, I agree. I think you see people kind of really grappling with that question about whether or not it's something they're willing to trust or accept the message from or enjoy. But again, I think it's all really use case based. So, if we're talking purely if it's clearly fantasy and purely entertainment driven, I think folks get really excited about seeing something that might have only existed in their imagination on screen. But when you start kind of having this question about whether or not the message you're getting is potentially deceptive and trying to convince you of something or tell a story that it needs you to believe as reality when it's really not, then we start to, I kind of think, dip our toes into some more dangerous waters.
Right. Well, and that's a really interesting point you said about fantasy, right? Where a lot of generative video almost feels like advanced CGI when it's used well. Although I have to admit, there will be times on social media where for, 5 or 10 seconds, I'm completely fooled, right? And then I start to see, the lighting isn't quite right, or it just looks a little bit CG is kind of the quality of some of that video. And so far, I think that all the things you're talking about in terms of authenticity and it being the right communications medium is probably why you don't see it as much in the enterprise and why you see it used more for entertainment, more for advertising, more for social than for communicating in an enterprise or from an enterprise where trust is just inherently necessary, right, for them to conduct business. And so it really is interesting, even as the quality gets better, whether or not people will trust that video and whether or not it'll be used in a trustworthy manner, right? And so in terms of, video workflows, right? So we talked a little bit about, maybe an editor going in and using some tools to more quickly edit a video. But really, we can also talk about video more throughout workflows, right? And stages in the video creation and approval process. And I'd be curious to get your take on, some of that tooling that customers can use and where that's going in the market.
Yeah, so we can look at video as a really rich source of data, but it houses that data in a way that's really hard to extract in a uniform way across the board. And so what AI helps us do at scale is start to organize and extract structured data from this unstructured medium of video. And I think when we're talking specifically about the enterprise, that at-scale component is what's really important. So on a one-off basis, you can watch a 2-hour video. You can think about important key points, or what a title for that video might be, or what a summary might be, or takeaways, or to-dos, or things like that. But certainly at scale for the enterprise, doing that is essentially impossible. And so what AI allows us to do is streamline all of that. Security and compliance is a great example of where there is high risk potential for there to be things in video content that the enterprise is concerned about, poses security threats, compliance threats, things like that, that AI can help find, interpret, and notify folks of, so that information isn't released into the wild when it shouldn't be.
Right. Yeah. And it becomes more and more important the more video is being created, right? So if you're talking about a company's creating, 30 minutes of video a month or something like that and posting it on social media, you probably do want to make sure all of that is viewed, approved, edited, right? Run by compliance or legal teams, depending on your particular security posture. But when you're creating, right, hundreds and thousands of videos a month in a large organization, whether that's for, sales or marketing, or even for things like customer meetings, right, it becomes impossible for humans to review that at scale. And what's amazing is, for years, we just kind of, said, oh, that's opaque. We're just going to let those videos sit there. We're going to let those videos go out, and we're going to make our best effort to be reviewing them and managing risk. But now you really have the ability to review content at scale, to manage content at scale, to tell what's maybe irrelevant or what is becoming more important, and to even take all of your videos and then synthesize that into a new piece of content that's going to tell a story, or bring you up to speed on a particular topic, give you the latest developments in a certain area, And it's just, opens up so many new possibilities in terms of review, in terms of remix, in terms of, creating highlights or clips, and getting people to the content that they need in a particular context or situation, right?
Yeah, it's an interesting point you made about, enterprises taking the risk of putting the information out because they don't have the tools in place to check them. So it goes out, your risk goes up. And I think you can say the same thing for a lot of other organizations that then withhold information and don't put it out. They kind of go far to the other side, where they just say, well, because we can't check this, we can't assess the risk, we just won't put any of this information out. And they're missing out on opportunities to share learning, share opportunities for growth or engagement or whatever the purpose of the content is. They lose out on all of those opportunities because they're nervous to put things out that they don't have a workflow to check. So it can, I think it can hurt folks on both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we already talked about how video can improve engagement or performance of different campaigns or communications. And so to just say, we're not going to do that, or we're not going to even allow recording at all at a company, and we've seen some of that historically, just means that you're sacrificing effectiveness to manage that risk. And it's so great to have tools out there that lets you have it both ways, right? And then, we also talk a lot about how video can help solve employee questions, right? And this is a case where if you are going in and you're having an issue with using, an internal system or, some office application or logging into something, you don't necessarily want to watch a long video, but you want to watch exactly the right moment that matters in that video, right? And I would love to hear your take on what's next in that world in terms of getting people either the content or the information that they need.
Yeah. So it's interesting because we talk about getting the right video to the right person at the right time. And AI helps us refine that even more to start thinking about the right moment in the right video at the right time. So I'm not just matching you because, or I'm just, so some system that, with its search engine is serving up a video because of the title or the summary that may or may not be AI generated, but with advanced AI, we can start to look at clips within videos. We can start to assess images that are a part of the video shown on screen. Did someone hold something up? Did someone kind of contextually refer to something with a different set of words than maybe were indexed in the search? So AI starts to help us serve up even better and better information to the user when they're looking for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and like most companies, we started with title tags and descriptions, things like that, right? But having AI generated chapters, being able to go through the transcript, being able to look through images and documents has been a huge help in terms of adding more context. And I'm super excited about where we're going next in terms of full multimodal understanding of that video and exactly what's happening. Because you can imagine someone shows you how to do something, and then that just becomes data, right? That gets infused to all of your AI agents or all of your overall enterprise systems, so that it can be explained, it can be shown, it can be told, right? And really understood when you need it without having to dig through a whole library or, maybe an hour-long training to find that information, right?
And I think AI also helps us make that experience for the user more easily navigated. So we can use AI to make that search experience conversational. It's not just that typical search box anymore, right? You can have a conversation with an assistant or an agent to say, go out and find me what is most relevant to this issue that I'm having or this topic I'm trying to learn about. And have, an aggregation of data from across multiple videos returned to you in that moment versus single search results. So it really kind of expands what gets served up to users when they need it the most.
That's right. Yeah. And we've even worked with customers who have infused video data into their AI agent. And so when they released a video on annual reviews, when you ask the agent about it, it can know what region you're in, whether you're a manager or not, find the right portion of the video where it talks about what managers need to do as part of the annual performance review process and when, and cite that for you so that it gets you right to that section and uses all the context from the org chart and from all of the other articles that might have been released to announce that. And it's just stunning how all these pieces of data can come together and then provide a rich video experience on top of it. And so it's really, I think, interesting to me how much opportunity there is to be able to fuse video into these AI experiences. Right. And in order to do that, you do have to have that data and experience fused. And so obviously, we just released our MCP server, right, that allows you to infuse that video into any AI assistant. But I'm not sure if you have other, takes on how we're seeing people infuse video into these kind of end user or agent facing systems.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity kind of in the HR training space. We kind of touched on education as a component, I think, early on, where you see, lots of recorded trainings at either big events or small meetings within an organization that are then logged away somewhere for maybe some future employee to watch or for someone to engage with at some point in the future. But if those are stored properly and we're extracting the important information from them, they can be assessed over and over by employees or by folks looking to learn from that information in an environment that is already native to whatever platforms they're using at that organization. And MCP really facilitates that and allows folks to maintain kind of the familiarity of certain platforms while capitalizing and extracting all of that value from the video that's being hosted on a platform like ours.
Right. Well, and the learning use case is one every company does, right? Everybody has learning videos or trainings that they conduct. What I don't necessarily think they realize is how you can take this hour-long training that you do for new employees or with the rollout of a new system, break it into highlights using AI, serve those highlights up when somebody needs them, and then ultimately be able to create a playlist where if somebody does want a customized learning plan, right, rather than going through entire hours worth of training, they can get 1 hour that covers exactly what they need for their job on particular topics, right? And so that's certainly one is, how do you take what we've done traditionally as almost a classroom experience and get it to people right when they need it and right where they need it.
Yeah, that customized delivery is really, I think, where you see AI has the potential to shine, right? And you really get to build this uniquely targeted, customized highlight reel or playlist or whatever it is to make sure that the folks consuming that content are really getting the most possible out of that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Other places, obviously we talk with a lot of people in the service management space, whether that's IT service management, whether that's field service management. This is an area where, I worry that generative video isn't really going to help people solve the problem that they're looking to solve in terms of learning and training. But that creating high quality video assets or using content from trainings can really help to drive down the cost of labor, right? And the cost of needing to have somebody individually answer those questions or even type up an email that with the same response or the same walkthrough every time. I also think that more and more as people are rolling out their AI strategy, they need to have a data strategy that goes with it, right? They need to understand where data is stored, how to secure it, even in the context of an AI agent, and how to, take all of the assets that they have organizationally, whether it's those learnings, those trainings, those marketing announcements, those product how-to videos, and bring those all into the agentic context as well, right? And so I think that's, another really exciting development in the market, and somewhere where you can take both the richness of video as a data source, in addition to it being a great experience and a great, way to show versus just tell. Well, thanks, Amanda. This has been a really interesting and, mentally stimulating conversation as always. I'm super glad to have you on the podcast finally, and I'm excited for all the great AI capabilities that are evolving so quickly in the market, and working together to see how we can bring these to customers.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.